Welcome to the podcast, Science of High Paid, High Performing, Happy Engineers, the show to help engineers develop all skills non technical. My name is Aditya Guthey, and I'm a speaker and a performance coach for engineers to transform them into rock stars. Welcome, everyone. Today we have Andrew Hinkelman. He's a certified professional coach and founder of Priority One Group, a leadership coaching and consulting organization on a mission to guide ambitious engineers and executives to architect and implement their professional roadmap. Andrew has more than 25 years of experience in the technology and financial services industries across roles in IT, product management, business intelligence, along with marketing and consulting roles. As a chief technology officer, Andrew knows the organizational dynamics, politics, and personal challenges involved with navigating high-growth startups and complex global enterprises. In addition to core infrastructure and proprietary software development, Andrew has had responsibility for information security, digital transformation, user experience, business continuity, IT compliance, and project management. He's CISSP and ITIL V3 certified. Andrew lives in the Seattle area with his family, his mountain bike, and paddleboard. Let's start with the paddleboard, Andrew. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Aditya.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your experience in your career, starting from an engineer and moving on to leadership roles, and you have had many various roles.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what's interesting, I think, for my story is that a lot of it is maybe not your typical engineering path. So I actually did a liberal arts degree for my bachelor's degree, and way back when the web was really exploding in the late '90s, the content development, the web page building was a little bit more accessible to people at that time. So, I got really enamored with that, and I got excited about learning how to build web pages. And that kind of progressed into managing websites. I went back to school and I did my master's degree in engineering. And I kind of was a technologist at that point and just fell in love with it, followed my curiosity, and just kept on taking on new roles. I was just always wanting to learn and take on new roles. So that really took me through product management, program management, and then at one point I started to manage more business applications and infrastructure. And then that led to chief technology officer role at a rapidly growing mid-sized financial services company, where we had plenty of challenges around scale, stability, building teams, recruiting, and recruiting is always a huge challenge, and retaining people. So after a while, I got to one of those pivot points where I started to kind of wonder what I was doing. I started to wonder what was next, and I always loved mentoring people. I love to watch people come in, earlier in their careers, and see their passion and really help them grow. And I just realized that, I had some good coaches along the way. And so I left that role about a year and a half ago and, became a certified coach. And I now am, about a year in, and I'm working with, between 20 and 23 people, and they span all different roles in engineering mostly.
Wow, that's powerful story on how you navigated your career. So, Andrew, what is the motivation for you to choose different roles? Obviously, you were worked in different roles, including marketing, sales, and engineering. What was the motivation?
Well, I think at the time, I was just curious and wanting to do different things and wanting to learn, really. In hindsight, looking back, maybe I just get a little bit bored quickly. And I'm human, right? I get a little antsy and I want to do new things. But I think looking back at it, we're all goal driven. I think that's in our DNA, and we're meant to be moving forward. We're meant to be striving, and I tapped into that, and really, truly, at the time, a lot of it, I had a young family. I needed to make more money. Those are legitimate, powerful motivators. So, but more than that, even is just kind of that following my curiosity and wanting to have a larger impact.
That's powerful. And two things that you have mentioned too, which really caught my attention. One, you said following curiosity is one of the things that drove you into making those decisions. And the second one you also mentioned is being goal oriented, whether that is financial reasons or making a larger impact, whatever that is, right? So, what would you say? How do you distinguish between curiosity versus being goal oriented? Because to me, those are two different things. You could be curious about basketball, you could be curious about paddleboarding, but that might not achieve your goals. Versus being goal oriented is like, I want to become a CTO, or I want to make like $500,000, and this is what I need to do. It doesn't matter what I'm curious about, right? So, how did you distinguish between those two different things?
Yeah, a big driver for me throughout my career is trying to simplify. Like, I'm all about essentialism. I'm all about breaking it down, like fewer meetings, less email, all of that kind of stuff. So when I think of professional curiosity, one of the elements there is, I do want to make more money. I do want to I want a cool title. I want to have a big impact. So I don't know that in the professional sense I ever really separated those. I think that they were really together from the beginning, and I would put them, in front of me and kind of decide where I wanted to go. Well, one of the big things that came up for me in my early 30s was I got to that point where I was wondering what I was doing. And it was through some chance, books, reading, like just learning and kind of trying to figure out, how do I operate better at work? How do I control my emotions? How do I not get angry in meetings? How do I reduce, the amount of judgment that I'm applying to situations? So I really had to spend a lot of time and effort in my personal life to kind of develop qualities, self-awareness, kind of feeling like I'm being a genuine, grounded person to be able to be better at work. So I'm a big believer that the work you do privately, personally, on yourself is a huge factor in being able to be more effective at work.
Wonderful. And how did coaching help you in that process of self-awareness and improving yourself?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So during my professional journey, when I was working corporate, I had a couple coaches. I had a few that I hired myself, and they really worked as a sounding board, kind of helped me find the things, the blind spots, the things that I was missing, the looking around corners and peeling back the layers, all that kind of stuff. But when I moved into coaching and got trained as an executive leadership coach, I realized that I was finally bringing together a lot of the work I was doing personally with what I could do professionally. And that was a big aha moment for me. It was like everything was kind of coming together. There's a synergy, and it was and now things are kind of more holistic for me, and they make sense.
So can you expand on that? You were bringing in together your coaching skills versus your experience as a technology leader. Tell me a little more about how that has helped you become an effective leader.
Such a great question. At some point, learning another programming language or learning the next trend with, say, cloud deployments or, web services, whatever that might be, at some point, as you're moving through your career, that becomes less important. And that's always a little strange for people because you're used to learning, the next language, the next tool, the next getting the next certification, right? When we're younger, we just chew up certifications, it's just like
totally relate.
Like over and over and over. It's like, but at some point, you need to be a stronger communicator. You need to be able to build relationships with people who are different than you and see things differently. You need to be able to go learn the business. That is not necessarily an easy task. So those require humility. They require personability. They require self-awareness. So self-awareness and knowing how you're being perceived is enormous. So for me, that like coaching and the ability to kind of see yourself from above and really be able to question yourself and look at yourself a little bit differently and like I said, see around corners is really where the value of coaching comes in. So that's kind of where those come together. And I think that the value to people who are in engineering or program management or product management is really to kind of recognize and sink into the fact that it's not about more technology. It's not about learning the next cool trend.
That is so powerful, Andrew. I completely resonate, and mostly because I'm not only an engineer, but also coach many other engineers. And I found myself in the same trend too. What's the next technology? All right, I learned PHP, I learned Java. What's next? Python. All right, after Python, it's Go. All right, it's all done. Programming languages is all done. What's the next trend? It's data science. Let's go learn data science because that seems to be the next cool thing for the next 10 years, right? So at some point of time, it gets boring, right? It gets boring. At least for me, it got boring. Like, all right, I learned this, what's next? And it's interesting to learn new things, but it's all similar kind of things. So, and if you want to continue down that path, there's nothing wrong with it. There are many people who continue down the path because learning new technologies just give them a lot of power. But what you're saying is, if you want to grow in different dimensions, like you want to become a leader, you want to maybe start your own company, or you want to do something different than just learning the next new technology, that's when coaching and everything that you went through, Andrew, your personal development, hiring coaches, all of this is going to make a massive difference. And I think you have weaved in several lessons in there. It helps you see things differently. Learning the business is important. And unless you're aware of that, if you're just learning new technology and wondering why you're not being promoted, it's because you're not focusing on your communication skills. You're not focusing on building your business skills, right? So thank you. That's super powerful response. With that said, it drives me to the next question, which is how are you currently helping your engineering leaders and the businesses with the new set of skills that you have gained from your coach training program?
Well, when I typically work with people, and I want to say first that there's a little bit of a profile for the person who is ready and open and wanting to learn. Okay, so generally speaking, someone who's maybe about 10 years into their career is someone who has had a couple different roles. They've maybe been to 2 or 3 different companies. They've seen some different things. They've seen some challenges. They've had some challenging managers. So at some point, once you bump into those kinds of things and you start to see that you're bringing yourself to all these different roles, right? You might change jobs because of a bad situation and then recreate it in the next role. So those people who have had a little bit of experience and are motivated and ambitious are really the perfect people to work with. But once they can recognize that they want to grow, they have bigger goals, they want to do more, as a coach, the way I work with people really is along 2 paths. It's what's happening right now, what are the tactical kinds of things, and then also what are the big goals? What's the big vision? And I typically ask people like, what do you want to be doing in 2 years, 5 years? And that can be a really big eye opener. A lot of people don't ever ask themselves that question. So there's some magic in there.
Totally, I totally agree. And when you ask, you would think that's such a simple question to answer, right? But sometimes you ask these questions, and people were like, "Oh my God, I never thought about it," right? And that's such a huge eye opener. And also, what you're saying is, Andrew, when your clients realize that they don't want to jump onto the next bandwagon and they are willing to explore other opportunities, that's a perfect time to explore something like coaching, which helps you give different perspectives and really get self-awareness and see through the corners. And just for the record, Andrew and I went through the same training school, and coach training school, and that's how we met each other.
Yeah.
So you were about to say something, Andrew?
I was just going to say, there's a practical part of this too, right? Like you went to school and you got a bachelor's degree, right? I mean, for most of us, right? You went and you got help. You had instructors, you had professors, a lot of people play sports. They have coaches doing that. Why wouldn't you do everything you possibly could to drive your career and get better as a professional, given all of the opportunities? Like you want to build cool stuff. You want to have an impact. You want to provide for your family. You want to be able to take vacations. You want to be able to, travel. All those things that a good job is going to provide for you. So why wouldn't you do every single thing possible to really maximize your professional ability?
I can't agree more with you. The engineers typically who are working at some of the big companies have, spent years or if not decades trying to get better at their craft, and they went through some really good schools. But now many of them stop continuing the process, and one of the ways is like coaching is one of the ways that you can continue that process of self-improvement and doing everything you can to grow in your career.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that the people you work with or companies you work with face, Andrew?
That's such a good question. And I guess I'll start with some of the kind of basics, right? There's sort of the bread and butter list that most of us are probably aware of. It's things like communication. And that's a broad term for a whole bunch of different things, but really just communicating and building rapport with other people, building relationships with people outside of your team, outside of your organization. Those are common challenges. Another one which is always coming up with people is working with their manager. So managing up is a real challenge, and I don't think it's one that ever really goes away, no matter how far you are in your career. But earlier in your career, a lot of people have challenges because they sometimes see their manager as annoying them or getting in their way, and understanding that is in a very, very critical relationship for where you are, and how to better build your relationship with your manager is a key skill. It is really, truly one of the most important skills that you're going to have. So communication, building relationships, managing up, and really right now with COVID, boundaries are a huge one. So a lot of people are working they're online 12, 18 hours a day. And so those are kind of the core things. And then, like I mentioned before, not really having a sense for what's next. So some people, if they're in larger companies, they're kind of like, well, if I'm here, I have to be in this role for 4 years, and then I can make manager, and then I'll be in that role for 4 years or 3 years, and then I can make associate director, and then there's director, and then there's senior director. It's like suddenly you do the math, and it's like you're 110 years old and you just made VP.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, there's so many different ways I can go into, but I want to focus on two different things that you mentioned. One is the communication skills aspect. Tell us a little more about communication skills and why they're important.
So there's the sort of core around communication, which is how well you communicate. Are you transparent? Are you sharing information? So just strictly, are you communicating? Or are you the kind of person that wants to be, left alone, close the door, and everyone has to ask, right? So if people are always asking you, you're not communicating enough. You need to be proactive. You need to be communicating like what's going on, where you're at, all of that. So there's sort of like the very basic level of communication, and just feeling comfortable with reaching out to people and asking questions. There are a lot of situations where people are just not comfortable and if you're in engineering, not being comfortable reaching out to the product manager, the stakeholder that's over in operations or finance or marketing. There's a lot of people are not comfortable with that. And I feel like one of the greatest opportunities that truly has been much, much more difficult during the pandemic is just to play around with communication in your daily life. Like if you go get coffee, challenge yourself to say something nice to the person that's at the register. Like challenge it, make it a game. Hey, I like your shirt. Was that scary?
I like your smile.
Yeah, even better. I like your smile. What a great day it is today. Like, what happens? You feel like uncomfortable? Do you feel that fear? Do you feel all that? So, I think communication, it's a broad term, but I think it means it has important aspects to it, and a lot of it comes down to relationship building and just being natural and comfortable, building relationships outside of IT.
Right, and the biggest distinction for me, based on what you said, is, Andrew, communication is less about your knowledge that you have and how well you speak spoken English. It's less about that, and it's more about mindset, is what I'm getting from what you shared. It's about reaching out to people without being afraid, thinking to yourself that I'm going to sound stupid. It's asking a question in front of a team meeting without being afraid that people are going to make fun of you or your boss is going to fire you. Right? So I love that mindset aspect of the communication skills. The second powerful thing you also mentioned while sharing is around boundaries. And this is one of the things I see commonly happen among many engineers, especially when engineers in their leadership roles, they are given a lot of responsibility on the shoulders. They're managing teams, and certain outcomes depend on how committed the engineering leader is. In those situations, it's hard. I mean, the biggest challenge I often hear is it's hard for them to draw boundaries because they are responsible for something major. So how do you help your clients in those scenarios?
Well, a lot of people have that real serious work ethic, and they don't ever want to be seen as weak. They don't want to be seen as not willing to work hard and all of that. And a lot of that's important. It's very fulfilling for people to feel like they're needed and that they're building their reputation. So it's very, very important to people that they be seen as a hard worker. The line, though, gets crossed when you're allowing yourself to simply just answer questions, do things because it's easier to do them yourself than to hold other people accountable for them. And you start to get a little bit, the relationship changes from being in a role to, your whole life. So at that point, what people really need to do is to get used to saying no, to shutting off, to turning off, and making sure that they know what their role is. So, if your role is software development, your role is not necessarily leading other people and telling everyone when there's an outage, right? There should be a role for that. Now, if you're in a startup, everyone does everything, so those lines get blurred. But I think the other thing that I want to touch on is, you mentioned mindset, and everything keeps coming back to mindset, right? And I know as a manager, the sign of strength for me was when someone would come to me and say, this isn't sustainable. We can't do this anymore. We either need to hire people or we need to move this responsibility somewhere else, because, I'm spending 12 hours a day on it. I'm, so-and-so is, up all night doing this. So we need to do something about that. That, with some metrics involved and some forethought and some actual ideas and solutions, that is a sign of strength. Sign of weakness to me as a manager is someone who just is online 20 hours a day and never complains, and is the first to answer the email. All of that is just someone who's just kind of taking it all without really standing up for themselves.
To me, that's a mic drop moment, what you just said. I'm sure if anyone is watching it, I see plenty of engineering leaders going through this situation, and I hope you can take some of what Andrew said and demonstrate what real strength is. So I don't have to repeat everything that you said, Andrew. I think you said it very clearly. And now tell me, how how do you work with your people, and what are the programs that you offer?
That's a great question. So as an executive coach, as a leadership coach, the real core to what I'm working with someone about is first and foremost, what is going on right now? What's on your mind? Because if you don't address the things that are happening right now today, then it's hard to do a lot more. So if someone is having a challenge with their manager, if someone's having a challenge, building relationships, if there's a difficult personality in their team, so those kinds of items are sort of like the core, and I want to call them tactical. So in some ways, it's almost like what you do in your regular job. Hey, we're going to tackle some tech debt. We want to build in better performance, resilience. Something happened. We're going to have a post-mortem, right? So all those things that you do in the context of engineering, we're going to take a step back and use those same concepts for you in your professional journey and your professional life. Okay, what's going on? Well, I didn't communicate this really well to people, and so I got bad marks on my performance review. So a lot of those kind of tactical things are sort of the first stop, and then in parallel at the same time, we really spend a lot of time on their journey and where they want to go. So we'll go through values and vision, and we'll set goals around where they want to be in 2 years, 3 years, could be 5 years. Because once you really know where you want to be in the future and what you want to be doing, then everything else makes sense. And you can plot it, you can architect it, you can create your professional roadmap that says, hey, today I'm 30 and I'm a lead software engineer. Amazing. What I want to do in the future, though, is my dream was always to start my own company. Okay. What are the things that we need to do and put in place to get you closer to that? And a lot of it is just the same things you do as an engineer. It's planning, it's architecture, it's how do you become more resilient, how do you drive efficiency, and moving that thinking pattern that you have when you're doing engineering at work to your career. What would it look like if I architected and had a roadmap for my professional career to get me where I wanted? Wow, that's powerful, and that's really where a lot of the magic happens.
Totally. So any final thoughts, Andrew, before we conclude our show today?
I think the big thing is that most people, especially right now with the pandemic, just kind of need to give themselves a break. So luckily, the holidays are coming and most people, have some time off, but we're in an extreme situation. We're in a very unique situation. I would say everyone needs to assume there's another year of this, right? Pace yourself, give yourself a break, and go outside. Go outside as much as possible. Get some fresh air, get some exercise, unplug, take better care of yourself.
Great. I think that's a perfect way to conclude, because we got to take a break right now. But thank you so much, Andrew. How can people reach out to you?
Well, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. So you can search for me on LinkedIn. Also, my website is, my company is called Priority One Group, and my website is www.pri1.com. So it's pri-1.com. And that's the best way to find me.
Great. I'll also leave your contact details in the comment section of the the podcast wherever I launch it. Thank you again, Andrew, for being here today.
And thank you, Aditya.